Hello, everybody. Ooh, I see the numbers. They are increasing with everybody flooding in. We are so excited that you guys are here. Thank you for coming. Hello, and welcome to the second Chicago Baseball and Educational Academy's Power Hitters. Today's panel is all about women leveling the playing field. I'm Jahaan Blake, 15-year front office employee. I worked for the Dodgers, the Cubs, and the Red Sox. And now I run my own business where I coach women who work in sports. I'm a consultant, and I'm also the host of the Game of Her Own podcast. You guys, I'm honored, really honored to be the host and moderator today. And I'm not gonna lie, I like pinch myself sometimes. Like, how is this my job that I get to work with these incredible women every day? I'm inspired by my clients. I'm inspired by my podcast guests. Can't talk, I'm so excited. And I'm inspired by these women today. So before we jump into the panel, which I can't wait to do, I'm going to turn it over to Steve Hartley. He is the Executive Director of Chicago Baseball and Educational Academy. Steve, you are on mute.
I'm muted. You'd think I would have learned my lesson by now. I want to thank everybody for being here, everybody who's registered and is logged in to watch this, and especially I want to thank our panelists. It's amazing seeing these powerful women up there. Chicago Baseball and Educational Academy is a Chicago-based nonprofit organization that works with youth baseball organizations in neighborhoods all throughout Chicago. We were primarily founded to work with Black, Latino, and neighborhoods that aren't getting all the resources they need, founded by Curtis Granderson and Major League Baseball House at UIC. And, we really believe that opening up opportunities to people who have different things blocking them from those opportunities is very important. And last year when we started working with girls baseball camps, we had this idea to get some role models and mentors in front of the girls. And that's where we came up with this. So this is the second one. And with this crazy year, we thought it was just fine to do something like this again. And I wanted to thank all these ladies for being here. Their stories are inspiring. And I wish a lot of the young girls that we had at our camp last year are here to listen. This is obviously what they're all aspiring to as well. So I want to thank you again, ladies, for being here, and enjoy. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. And thank you for all the amazing work that you do. Okay. Ladies, it is time to jump in. We have a really great group here with incredible experiences. So love for everyone to get to know you, ladies. I'm thinking you're going to say who you are, what you do, and who you do it for. And because I like to have fun, and because we're unfortunately in the middle of a global pandemic, share with us what your COVID guilty pleasure is. So who you are, what you do, who you do it for, and your COVID guilty pleasure. And Dr. B, you're up in my left-hand corner, so you were going first.
I'm going to start with my guilty pleasure. So I allow myself, or actually encourage myself, to have a snack, whatever snack that may be. And I'm one of those people that get on the, I can do the same thing over and over again. So my snack right now is popcorn. I've been on a popcorn thing for like at 3 o'clock, I'm making popcorn. Prior to that, I'm obsessed with peanut butter. So I was having peanut butter cookies. So whatever that is, but I make sure I get a really good snack, which I didn't do before. So I am, she said, Dr. Wendy Borlabi. I am the Director of Mental Health and Performance for the Chicago Bulls. And I'm also the Executive Director of my nonprofit that I started called Wisdom Knot. So for the Bulls, I'm essentially what you would call a sports psychologist. So I work with the players and the coaches and help them perform better mentally. I've been doing that with the Bulls for probably like the last 3.5 years. Prior to that, I was with the Olympics. And my nonprofit is so in line with this organization. It's about helping inner city youth finding careers in sports that are not just being an athlete, but being the careers that we have, the careers that we're going to be talking about. So helping them learn that there's so much more for them besides being that 1% that makes it into the NBA or NFL or MLB.
All right. Thank you. And I feel like your guilty pleasure is every day for me, but before COVID, but that's okay. All right, Amy.
Thank you so much for having me today, guys. So my name is Amy McDevitt, and I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Digital for Marquee Sports Network, which is the new home of the Chicago Cubs on television. And also we recently announced a partnership with the Bears for a weekly show on Tuesday or Wednesday night, depending on what day they play. So we're excited to be partnering with them as well. And I joined Marquee last summer, just as we were really rolling up our sleeves and launching, and it's been quite a ride and a really exciting opportunity. I started my career in baseball with the Cincinnati Reds quite a while ago, and then moved to New York and worked in media for over 15 years. I was with ABC, ESPN, and Turner, and so really kind of got my feet wet, I guess, in media, and kind of almost baptism by fire in New York with that environment there, but learned a ton, and then was so excited about the opportunity to then come back to baseball and bring that media experience. So this has kind of just been the perfect storm for me. And I'm originally from the Midwest. I grew up in Minneapolis. So my COVID guilty pleasure is not getting dressed for work in like full fashion every day. It is one of the best things ever. I have two awesome little boys at home and my husband and a dog. And it's just like been so nice to have that extra time in the morning with family and not, rushing around packing a lunch and putting on makeup or whatever it is that you do. So that's me.
That's a good one. Welcome, Amy. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Alicia.
Thank you, Jahaan and Amy. I too appreciate the family time as well. I'm honored to be here today. Cubs Charities actually is a big partner to CBEA, and Curtis Granderson, a great friend to the Chicago Cubs organization. So again, happy to be here. I'm Alicia Gonzalez. I'm a native Chicagoan, actually grew up in Pilsen and Little Italy, so right by UIC. My mom was a professor at UIC for 25 years, so definitely warm and dear to my heart. I currently serve as the executive director of Cubs Charities, which is the nonprofit arm of the Chicago Cubs. And like CBEA, we are laser focused on utilizing sport and education to help level the playing field with actually a really specific lens around trauma-sensitive coaching. So always excited to hear from Dr. B and what she's working on in terms of mental health, because we obviously know that sport is extremely unique in supporting our young people, especially not just in the physical health, but in the mental health world as well. So excited for this panel. My COVID guilty pleasure, people might think this is a little weird, but I'm going to say it anyway. So I'm a crazy fitness fanatic. I was a big runner, which I'll talk about later. So we're fortunate that I built a little gym in our house and got the Peloton a few years ago. And so the fact that now I can actually find 45 minutes in my day, in the middle of the day, and work out, that's kind of my guilty pleasure. And then I come back and I look terrible on Zoom, but that's okay. But again, no one's questioning it, so it's all right.
Nope, and you look great. And don't be surprised if I'm like knocking on your door to use your personal gym with my mask on, of course. I'm super jealous. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. And last but not least, Tasha.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Tasha, and I am the Director of Student Athlete Development at UIC. This is a fairly new role, and I am so honored not only to be with these amazing women on this panel, but also to be at UIC and to be helping our student athletes. Basically, when someone asks me, like, what is student development? It's like everything outside of academics and sport. And people are like, okay, so what's left? The holistic development of that person. So leadership and career, life skills, financial literacy, mental health, like all of it, whatever you bring as your whole person, like that's what I get to help program for. And I'm just like, absolutely, like Jahaan said earlier, like, pinch me, how is this my job? Like 100%, I'm so excited, so grateful. And I'll get more into that because I can talk all day long. But my guilty pleasure, besides working out and like fitting that in, totally vibe with you, is also finding like new recipes. I am guilty of all of the Tasty and BuzzFeed articles that come through. I'm like, oh, can I make that? So my roommates, and when I lived with my family for a couple of weeks in between transition, loved it. But that is another reason I will also have to hit the gym. So that is my COVID guilty pleasure.
It's fine. Just go to Alicia's house and you'll be good. Get on that Peloton. I'm just inviting people to your house. It's fine. Awesome. Thank you so much, and welcome. And I guess I'll give my guilty pleasure, since I already did my intro. Mine is, I thought yours would be a little different. Mine's kind of embarrassing now. I literally can sit down and binge watch like a 5-season show with like 20 episodes in almost 2 weeks. Like it is, I mean, I'm really good at it along with my husband. So it's a guilty pleasure. And so much so that the last 2 weeks I've read like 2 books because I'm like almost embarrassed and, a little ashamed. Okay, so let's jump in. I am so glad you guys are here. This is going to be really candid and real talk. So the women and men who are listening can really get something out of this and be empowered and inspired. So we would love if you could take us back and talk about when you first fell in love with sports. Talk a little bit how it had an impact on your life. Tasha, do you want to start us off?
Sure. I think for me, it was kind of conditional. When I first started out at the age of 8, I had gone to the doctor and the doctor was like, she's a little thick, so you might want to get her like running about, which is like a whole other situation specifically with women in sport that we will eventually probably get into. But I remember my mom was like, okay, so you get to choose. It was like in the heat of the summer. I'm from the Midwest. And she was like, you can either join swim team or you can play softball. And I was like, sweat and play softball or be in a cool pool. So I obviously joined the swim team, and it was there that I realized my body was powerful and could do like really awesome things. And because I was tall and thick, if you will, I was able to swim up like age levels. And so I wasn't with the 8-year-olds, I was with like the 9 and 10-year-olds. And I was like, yeah, I'm here. So I totally leaned into the confidence of like, my body is powerful and it can do really awesome things. And then it just like projected me into trying other sports and thinking about other opportunities that I had because my body is built the way that it is. And I have the attitude of competition always. So yeah, at age 8 is when I like really got into it. And then by the time I was in junior high, I was like trying all the sports and was just like, this is so much fun and I love it. And by the time I like was in my actual age group, I was like, I've been here for years, everybody. So it was kind of just like, that's how I leaned into it. And that was kind of the first open door for me because I was like, I belong here. So that's my journey.
I love that story, and I love how boss you were. I'm not going to curse here, so I'll just say boss. All right, Amy.
I would say my journey into loving sports has kind of evolved as my maturity level evolved. So, I mean, I was very lucky to have a family that played sports. We watched sports together as a family, and I think that's so important too. Just like the kind of exercise of enjoying sports with others is so vital, and I think that's been so hard in this time where we're all kind of separate because sports is so much of what brings us together. But my parents definitely kind of engendered that love of sport in us. And then I was a journalism major in college, and I thought I wanted to be a local news reporter and put myself out there for a number of opportunities. And at the end of the day, I just realized local news is really hard. You have to have a tough skin to report on some of the stuff that goes on out there. And I quickly pivoted into sports and realized, this is something that brings such joy to people, and now as I've gotten more into this business, I've learned too, like, I think something that's so special about sports is kind of to your point earlier, Jahaan, you can't binge a sports season like you can entertainment television. So that's what's so special about what we all work with is like, you have to watch every game throughout that 162 game or 15 game season to know what's going to unfold and what's going to happen. You can't watch it on a single flight from New York to LA or Chicago to Phoenix. So I just think that's so powerful now from a business perspective. To be a part of that must watch event every night is really, really cool.
It's interesting. You said having, working in local news, you have to have thick skin. I felt that way when I was working in sports. It was something I thought I lacked because I'm very emotional. And do you feel the same, that you need that thick skin where you are now? Not necessarily in the company you work for, but just in general.
Not really. I mean, I don't. I feel pretty well suited and supported in this industry, and I think I think for me, what I do, I'm an emotional person, and I connect with others quickly. So I think I feel what others are feeling. So in that regard, I think news was just hard for me because it was hard to stomach some of the things that you would see come across the wires, or have to call the local police station to get the scoop, and they're like, come on, lady, we're saving lives here. I'm not going to talk to the local news station right now. I mean, those were tough things. I have such joy in what I do now. It's highlighting the great moments and hopefully bringing entertainment and action into people's homes every night. So it's a little different.
Yes, I think the key word there too was being supported, right? And feeling the support within your organization. That's great. Thank you. Dr. B.
So first, let me just say that Amy and Jahaan, the fact that you two said that you're emotional, I think that's a huge plus. That's one of the beauties of being a woman. We know what our emotions are. We're able to move forward with them. We can track it. We can make decisions because we know what those emotions are. So thank goodness, right? So I had to get that in there.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you said it.
So my love of sport came from, I'm a very family oriented person. So I came to the United States when I was about 4. I'm originally from Ghana. And when we came to the US, my dad and my brother was learning about American football. Because in Ghana, we call soccer football, right? So as they were learning about American football, they would sit and watch on Sundays, they would watch football games. And it was in the late 70s. And so you always saw the Steelers and you always saw the Cowboys. And so as they were learning about American football, it was it was family time. So when they came, my parents were working, they were going to school. So we really didn't see them. We were totally latchkey kids. But on Sundays, we got to be together because they were learning American football. We also watched, black and white Westerns as well, but I'll leave that alone. But that's when I fell in love with sports, because that's when I got to be with my family on Sunday watching sports. So I'm a person that could do that now. I could sit and watch sports all day long because it brings up a bunch of emotions and feelings, and it's home and it just feels good. And so it started with just trying to connect with being, as my, Americanized. And they wanted to play every sport. So we played every sport. I even played American football when I was younger. I started out with soccer, but I was just a little too physical. So they said, you might want to have her play football. So I was play Pop Warner. There you go. Play Pop Warner.
Yes. That's awesome.
I was that girl out there. I played Pop Warner football until I was probably like 11. So I loved it. Lots of fun. But it was all tied to emotion and feeling of being family. And that's where the love of sports came. And so it's just part of me, because family is part of me.
Was it hard, Dr. B, to go out there and be a football player when there was no other females out there?
It wasn't, because I didn't really notice that there wasn't other females out there. It didn't occur to me, because my dad and my brother never said you're the only girl. It was just, we're going to play football. My brother was 2 years older than me. So this is just what we did. And they encouraged it. And I was never a girly girl. So I was never the girl that wanted to be the cheerleader or wore dresses. And so I was always wanted to be like my older brother. So he was playing football, I was playing football. It didn't occur to me till later on when someone else brought it to my attention. I think I was probably like in high school that they were shocked that I played Pop Warner. And I thought, why? I mean, didn't every girl play Pop Warner football? Right.
Yes. See, I didn't want to be on the sideline with the cheerleaders, but I was not as brave as you. I did not want to play football. I wanted to watch it with my family. That's how I fell in love with sports, but I did not want to get out there. So kudos to you. All right. And Alicia.
Well, I too want to just say thanks to Amy and Dr. B for talking about the emotional piece. I always say to my friends and to, my coworkers, it's we have this unique sense of seeing the other side of the street. We have empathy. And I think that's something that, it's an asset for us. So, and yeah, I'm emotional and I'll say it, but, I feel like it's a good thing. So I'm all about that. I grew up, interestingly enough, I had 3 of my parents, so my stepfather included, were all big social justice advocates, whether it be through arts, education, or medicine. And so I grew up going to protests. I grew up, just having the social justice in my blood. And so when I was 6 years old, 6 or 7, I was walking down the street in Pilsen, and which back in the day was one of the most poverty-stricken neighborhoods in the city of Chicago. And my mom would take me out to go swim all the way on the north side. And I was walking down the street one day with my dad, and I said, why do I have to go out of my neighborhood to participate in sports? And my dad said, because not everything's equal. And I said, well, that's just not fair. And, as a kid, you say everything's just not fair. And I said, well, why don't my friends have access to the pool that I have access to? And he said, because everything's not fair. And I said, well, I need to do something about it. And he said, well, then do something about it. So as I got older, that was sort of that led me to the trajectory of my life, was that I wanted to come back and build sports programs or build sports facilities in neighborhoods like my own. And so that was something that, I'm blessed that I was able to do that, and that I'm still doing that to this day. But that was that first glimpse of things are not equal. And even in the sports world. And so that was a really big piece of my sort of learning curve. And then, but at the same time, one thing I would add is that I went to Chicago public schools at that point. And in Chicago public schools, there was PE still, and you had physical education at least 3 times a week. And so I was able to get some of that energy out in my actual own PE classes. That obviously since has decreased a lot over the course of the last several decades, which is also why we need more sports programs to obviously supplement the fact that there isn't as much physical education. But that was my sort of first glimpse into the sports world.
That's an incredible story. Wow, we could talk more about that, and everything. But I will pick on one thing that seemed to be a theme, which was emotion, and that a lot of us are emotional. So maybe one of you, do you have what advice would you give to women who are very emotional, but don't know really how to really work with that, right? Like while they're in the professional world, right? It kind of gets in their way is what I'm trying to say. Like what advice would you give to them?
I would say actually to own it. Again, I think it's who we are. It's a very powerful tool. So I think to own it. The other thing I would say is self-awareness. I preach that a lot, is that, so if you know who you are and what your triggers are for you to be angry, get hungry, frustrated, sad, if you know what those are, then you're able to be ahead of the game. So that way something may happen, you actually know it's going to make you frustrated or make you sad. And then you can put things in place to kind of help you move forward, be that barrier for you. So that way you don't get to that point. I mean, a really simple example would just be, I definitely am one that can get hangry, and it happens really quickly. I've learned it happens really quickly, right? And so I always have something in my purse, in my bag. There's always food. There's food in my office. There's food everywhere, because just a little bar. Because it happens really quickly. And in sports, as you know, we don't really have those moments to say, oh, this is breakfast, this is lunch, this is dinner, here's my snacks. And so you could go a long period of time without eating. And I know that when that happens, I get my frustration and my patience really decrease. And so I am quick to pull something out to eat, so that can help me move forward. So that's a piece of self-awareness, to know what it is that triggers those emotions in you, can help you put things in place. So that way you can prevent that from happening. And again, it's that you own it. That's who you are. Don't try to say I'm not that person. It's who you are, but you can use it as a strength, as a benefit, because you're going to be angry. So then you know how to put your words together. You know how to present yourself, because that anger is there for you, right? You can use it as fuel, as positive. It's a powerful thing.
Yes, I agree that self-awareness is key. And to go off of the hangry, because that's me, there was a time when Whole Foods was making this bacon that did not, it sounds gross, did not need to be refrigerated. And so I was like buying it by the boxes, and it was always in my bag, because for me, protein does it. Like, I'm like instantly back. And so I was known as the girl with the pocketbook bacon. So Beyonce had her hot sauce, I had my bacon. So thank you for that. Okay, so I don't know about you guys, and I've been in sports for almost 20 years, and I know some of you have as well. So let's look back, and there wasn't a lot of women who looked like us in positions like yours, right? There were no executives, and if there were, they're very far and few between, and there was no social media, not to date ourselves, right? So you couldn't see what was going on across the country, but you knew when you got together with your industry that it was lacking. So let's talk a little bit about what's been the biggest challenge you faced as a woman in a male-dominated industry. And I'll toss that one to whoever wants to go jump on it first.
I'll start. So I'm very lucky here at Marquee to be surrounded by several other female leaders. We have a woman named Deb Schneider who leads our tech ops, and then a woman named Robin Mulvaney, who's our head of our finance, and our marketing director, and kind of my right hand and everything, Tabitha Green, all women, which has been great. And I had some tremendous female leaders also when I was at ESPN, which is amazing. One of the smartest women that I know is a woman named Trisha Betron, who is a leader in sales at ESPN. And I learned so much from her. And also some of that, like channeling emotion, and you're really fired up about something and you're about to go into a meeting, and how do you like step into the stairwell and breathe for 3 seconds and then go into that meeting and not just go in overwhelming. But I think for me now, and maybe this is unique to, actually it's not unique. I think everybody's got a lot going on in their life these days. I think for me, something that I struggle with, and it's not just sports, but also entertainment, was a lot of the people that are really like killing it in my field don't miss anything. They see every show, they read every article, they read every newspaper, they've watched every golf match, they've watched every sporting event, and they're talking about it the next day, or they're bringing it up in a meeting. And for me, that's really hard. I had a moment this summer where some guys were talking about what happened in some golf match the next day, and I just couldn't enter that conversation because I had no idea what they were talking about, and it really made me mad. And it's like, I wasn't mad at them, I was mad at myself, but then I just kind of had to take a step back and realize, like, you can't be everywhere. Like, you can try and you can do your best, and I'm certainly going to do that, but because I think the more informed you are about your craft and your environment, the better and more effective you'll be. But that's something that is a challenge for me. It's just like, having a leg up on others. Like I said earlier, I've got 2 little guys, and just, I don't know, a lot going on. And I have a hard time sometimes like catching it all, and that really bugs me. So that would be my answer to it.
Okay, good. Anyone else want to share?
I can. Amy, I totally feel what you feel as far as like, dang it, I missed that. And like, I feel like, especially as women, I don't want to like say a blanket statement, but at least in my experience being in sport, I've been professionally in sport for just over 7 years. And every time that I try to talk to coaches, or anytime that I try to step into a room where it's majority all males, I feel like I have to be the expert in the room on whatever they're talking about for me to even have a seat at that table, to have a conversation, or for me to be taken serious. And like, it's frustrating because on the offshoot, if some intern that is a male walks into the room and didn't catch the golf match, no one's going to judge them or be like, oh, well, they don't know what they're talking about. But because we've decided that this is where we want to be within the sports world, heaven forbid we miss something or have a priority that's not watching every single golf match that's on TV. I feel like if I look back on who my coaches were, even as I was growing up, they were all men. And so when I started to actually have like female influences in my life, like I was almost I almost thought that they weren't good enough. And like, how dare I do that? But like, that's how I was socialized to some degree. And then when I got to college and had both a male and a female coach, I like finally, college was obviously a very opening experience for me. But I finally was like, oh, they can both be bosses at what they do. And it's okay that they both have a seat at that table. And it wasn't until I started to progress in the sports career that I started to see women in positions that it was like okay for me to reach to be an AD. It was okay for me to reach to be a head coach. It was okay for me to reach to be a senior director somewhere with anywhere in sport, because prior to that, it was always someone that looked very similar to my grandpa, who I love dearly, but like, I was like, well, I'm not my grandpa. So, yeah, I think that, you know, we're making a lot of awesome changes, and like the women on this panel right now are proof that like you can do it all. But I think we also need to be kind to ourselves through the journey, because we're doing the best that we can. I would say better than most. But all of that being said, like, we're crushing it, and like we're paving the way for other women to have a seat at the table, for multiple reasons.
So Tasha, what you're really speaking about too is that, you know, representation matters. If you can see her, you can be her, right? And I lived exactly what you were just talking about. Once you see, like, oh, okay, and I don't need a 10-page quiz to sit at this table and get 100%, right? You know, I need to know what I'm doing and be an expert at what I'm here to do, but you don't need to know everything, you know, outside of that world. And yeah, so I've been there with the quiz, sometimes from girlfriends, which is not fun. What advice would you all give women when it comes to working in a male-dominated industry? How about Alicia?
You know, I guess I'm a little bit unique here because I came from the traditional nonprofit sector, which is very female dominated. And so, you know, I felt so supported for 20 years in my career because I saw so many women and women of color in positions of power. And even though I had male board chairs, and I was thinking about this as you were posed the question, in my former job running my own nonprofit that I had started, I had all male board chairs. And it was actually the male board chairs that were the ones that encouraged me to increase my salary. They were the ones that encouraged me to do more professional development opportunities. They were the ones who encouraged me to raise my voice more. So it was interesting that it was these men that did that for me. And again, but also blessed to have an incredible squad of women in this world who are leaders in the nonprofit world, leaders in government, leaders in corporate America right now that are really the mentors of my life. And they're my age, but we really support one another. So but I will say, you know, and again, I know that this is a public Zoom, but I also want to be candid and honest, because I think that's where what we want to hear is that it has been a challenge. It's been a challenge to move from the traditional nonprofit sector into a male-dominated space. And I don't think, again, that it's anything that the men are doing intentionally. I just think there's unconscious bias sometimes. And I definitely have expressed that since I've joined the organization. I've said different things at various points about how I want my voice at the table, how my voice, not only as a woman, but a woman of color, and also a woman who has different experiences than other people at the organization. And luckily, I've been given that opportunity, and I've had I am at the table on many different things, and so I really respect that the Cubs have listened to that, and I think are even more intentional now about understanding where their weaknesses have been in terms of diversity, inclusion, and equity. And I think they're paying much more closer attention to that now, which is great. And so, but again, I feel really blessed that I was able to have an opportunity to be in the traditional nonprofit sector and have just incredible women around me that guided me, and men too. But it has been a challenge. And I will say one other thing. I thought of myself as a pretty confident woman. And I still think I am, but there's something to be said that I feel maybe it's COVID, but my confidence has certainly gone down over the last couple of years, and the self-doubt creeps up. And so I sort of have to come back to my squad of women and men who have mentored me to kind of lift me back up sometimes when I'm really feeling doubtful of myself. And again, I don't know if that's COVID related. I don't know if it's just the state of the world that we're in. I don't know if it's a transition over to a male dominated industry, but it's there, and I'm being brutally honest.
I love the honesty, and I'm hearing a lot here. And if we break it down for a second, like, when did you join the Cubs again? Reminds me.
In May of 2018.
Okay, so they bring you in, a new hire, and there's diversity, and really the diversity is in a couple of areas, but then also an experience. You're coming from a female-led organization, and look what you're able to bring in and talk about what that does to other females. And really, it sounds like to me, you were using your voice, right? Like you were speaking up, which is probably great advice for everyone who's listening. If you feel like you don't have that seat at the table, that you have to use your voice, because if you don't, no one will know how you feel. Would you agree with that?
Yes, but I think it goes back to also what Dr. B was saying in terms of self-awareness, right? And sort of how do you use your voice? Like, when do you use your voice, right? I'm not going to go in, guns blazing every single time something happens, but really being thoughtful about what point I want to get across, and how do I want to get that point across. And oftentimes I don't think men actually think about that. They just get their point across. We as women have to actually internally have this dialogue with ourselves of, oh my gosh, okay, I can't cry, or I can't come off, angry. I have to actually be thoughtful and diplomatic. And I've been in rooms where people aren't thoughtful and diplomatic, and they just say what's on their mind. But if we do that, it comes across as, oh, she's just emotional, or she's just an angry human being and whatnot. So I think it does come across like when I want to fight a battle, I have to think about it long term, and I have to think about, how do I do this in a way that's actually going to resonate with the person across the table from me.
Yes, that's great. And so I want to go to Dr. B in a second. I'm just looking at the attendees, and Kim Hui. Kim, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, but she's saying, loving the vulnerability from everybody. And as Brene Brown says, who I personally love her work, says that weakness, it's not weakness, that's actually strength, right? Vulnerability, it's not weakness, it's actually strength. So Dr. B, this is a perfect segue to you. So we're talking about using your voice, self-doubt, like when that self-doubt creeps in when you're in those situations. What advice would you give women?
There's so much. I'm like trying to get it all together, because there's so much, that I want to share.
We are here for it.
The first thing that actually came in my mind is back to the self-awareness piece, but it's about being you, right? So don't lose yourself to get a job or to get a promotion. Don't do that. You want to stick with who you are, and again, kind of and embrace that. But you don't want to. If you're not the person that's going to sit and watch golf all day long, you don't need to be the person that's going to sit and watch golf all day long. That's not who you are. Maybe you're the person that's going to get the Cliff Notes versions from somebody else. But when you go into the meeting, if you are an expert on talking about how people market that, that's what you talk about. You don't have to watch the golf match, but you can talk about the marketing aspect, because that's what your expertise is, correct? Right. So be who you are. Self-doubt and self-confidence is something that it's there. It's part of just being human. I talk about the ebbs and flows of self-confidence. It's like this daily, right? So depending on what time of the day or what's going on, it goes like this. We just don't want these big steeps. But this is a normal thing. And I feel that with confidence, we we tend to say that we lose our confidence, but I think that it's always there. We just don't pay attention to it because we're paying attention to all the negativity that's coming. But your confidence is there. It's sound. But because you're listening to all the negative thoughts in your head, or maybe what somebody else is saying, you kind of think, oh, maybe I've lost my confidence. And all of a sudden you're like, I found my confidence again. You didn't find it. It was there. You just didn't pay attention to it. So knowing that you got to try to not focus on the negative and focus on the positive. Maybe find something little that you did that day that you're doing really well, and keep rolling with that, right? Because the negative is always going to be there. We know that. We're going to pay attention to the negative. So it's going to be up to you to bring in the positives, and they don't have to be huge. They could be small, really small. For example, a positive for me today would be that I actually, I tend to do a couple of workouts. I'm also a Peloton, love my Peloton. But because I've got 2 small kids and because working, I don't get to do the normal things in the course of the day. But today I was actually up and ready and, showered, had breakfast. I was like, yes. And it was 9:30 and I was ready to go with my day. It's a small thing, but it was a positive thing. I celebrated it, and it was great. We had a little dance party because mom was all dressed at 9:30. It was an awesome thing.
That's fantastic. So Dr. B, I hear you saying, don't lose yourself, be who you are. And then I think the most powerful thing you said was your confidence is there. You didn't lose it. You were just focusing on something else. Did I get that right?
Correct. It's there. It is there. You just focus on the negative because, again, the negative comes through. So know that you are a confident person, and embrace it and own it, and just try to listen to the little positives that you're saying, not the negatives.
Oh, that's great. All right. Let's dig into more of what you guys do day to day. So I have a question for each of you. We'll start with Amy, and your work has been, most of your work has been in television. So can you talk to us a little bit about your journey as a woman in such a tough industry, having done it both in TV and sports?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think one thing that I would just say in terms of giving advice to people and like wanting to break into either field, even if you're not in the field currently, anything you can do to just draw parallels with what you're doing today and how that same activity or skill applies to the role that you want. I think you can kind of clear the path and convince people, give them your pitch, why you belong in that space. So when I made the move actually from baseball to entertainment and television, I had to, I said, well, sure, I've not worked in this type of television before, but we were, in a ballpark, you're putting on a show for, 2-3 million people a season. Sure, you have 2-3 million people a night watching your 30-minute program on national television, but just kind of trying to convince them of those parallels and that like I had the skill set, I was just doing it in a different arena and like give me that shot. And so, and I actually got my I guess break with ABC. I kept just flying myself there to New York for the interviews and just begging them to give me a chance, and luckily they did. And I think I think it was there are some challenges in television in general, particularly when you're in a live environment. One of the shows that I actually started working on was The View, which I don't know if many folks are still, watching that these days, but I was there back in like the Star Jones and Meredith Vieira and Barbara Walters days. And man, I mean, I learned so much so fast in that live environment with these very opinionated talent, and you had to be on your feet and just like ready to pivot. And we had big multi-million-dollar advertisers sitting in the audience waiting for their product to be plugged. And then the talent would roll their eyes and, say the product was a piece of junk. And then I'd have to be holding the hand of the, marketing gal from Kohl's or something backstage and telling her we're going to be okay. And, it was just really like, it kind of prepared me for everything that I could ever face in life. Cause you just had to really think on your feet and have like a what's next and like a plan of action right away. I really just had to kind of dive in and learn as soon as I got into that. And then it evolved over time. I would say for me, probably in terms of being a female, I actually got some really great advice from a woman at ABC years ago, which was you always want to be known for your ideas. And I thought that was really powerful. I think particularly when I was younger in my career, I'm just being candid, I was very focused on, I guess, I just was focused on I wanted to be attractive and perceived as attractive by others. And, now that I'm, in my 40s and, I just, my perspective has completely changed. And I think, when I was in my late 20s, I was kind of focused, sometimes maybe on the wrong thing. And that advice of just, being known for your ideas can carry you so far. And I just think about that all the time when I talk with young people. And that was something I think that, even when I moved on to ESPN, I had, other similar advice about, you could be in a certain environment where, things could get like a little too social or too friendly, or, just be kind of careful about, where you find yourself. And, I think just kind of guiding yourself and I guess kind of like staying true to who you are and not being influenced or like, compromising your values to, get to the next level or, take on something. I think that's all really valid. Like what, what Dr. Borlabi said about just like staying true and knowing who you are and being known for that smart woman that you are and not, getting sidetracked by all the other stuff. Cause, there's a lot out there. And I think, this was all like before social media too. I mean, I was like finding jobs in the newspaper when I got started here, so, I can't imagine what it's like for young people now. And so, to that end, it has been tough, but it's also been incredibly rewarding. And like, I just can't believe I have to pinch myself sometimes at the places I've been able to work. So.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Amy. Tasha, talk to us a little bit. You're a former college athlete. How do you take what you learned from being an athlete and apply it to what you're doing now in college athletics?
I think everything I learned through being an athlete is what I use in my day-to-day, like 100%.
Yes.
So I was a 2-sport athlete, track and field. I was a thrower. And then I was also quick. I'm very speedy for my stature. And so I actually played Division I women's rugby. We were the pioneer Title IX sport for my college, Eastern Illinois, go Panthers. I'm a true flame now though. Let's not get it confused here. But I say that to say, I never had an off season. So my time management skills was like on point. So when I think about programming for my student athletes, like I know it has to be intentional and I know it has to be like knock it out of the park every single time, because if I want them to come back to the programming, they need it to be a hit. And then I also lean on this idea of like, be the woman that you needed at that time in your life. And so specifically for my female athletes, like I really try to be intentional with providing spaces and opportunities for them to like learn and grow. And I'm also a huge fan of Brené Brown and everything that she does, as well as Kristen Neff and like all of the wonderful women that are paving the way that it's okay to lean into that emotion, because sport is from its like institutional, like masculine. And so the minute that you start to put a feminine, female presenting person in sport, all of a sudden it's like contradicting and they're like, I don't know what to do with you. And we're like, oh, I'll show you what you can do. So I think that when I'm helping provide those opportunities, obviously representation matters, obviously being intentional matters, and then utilizing what I learned from whether it was like my leadership like responsibilities that I had on my different teams, the time management, like helping connect the dots now that I'm out of that world, for the students that are in it now, if that makes sense. Everything that I learned as an athlete, I use in what I do day to day. And it also gives me a little street cred with my student athletes because I'm like, don't tell me you don't have time for this. Like I was a 2-sport athlete. I did X, Y, and Z. If you want it, you'll get it. So yeah.
Say that quote again, Tasha. Be the woman you needed. Finish that for me.
Be the woman that you needed at that point in your life. So like when I think about it, one of my coaches in college was the first like female head coach that I ever saw in my life. And like she was amazing mentor to me throughout that time. But I also needed just like another woman in my life outside of my mom being like, you can literally do whatever you want. Like you can do that. And helping me find those resources, I think is what I missed out a little bit in my college career. So that's what I try to do to reach back and help the women coming up.
Yes, that's fantastic. All right, Dr. V, when we talked, I was like, man, I wish there was a version of you, or I knew you when I was an athlete and playing soccer, and the mental toughness. Like it sounds great, but it's hard to accomplish and get there. So talk to us a little bit about your unique role, and can this be like considered a product of the modern athlete?
So actually, so sports psychology has been around for, I don't even know, long time, 30, 40 years. The Cubs, incidentally, actually were one of the first teams to hire somebody. So it's been around. It's just, we've just been hearing about it more in the last 10 years. And then obviously in the last 2 years, we've been hearing about it quite a bit. It is a role that I love sports psychology. I think it's truly is me. I get to the psychology piece of it, and I get to be with sports. And so it all just comes together. And it's just helping you learning how to perform better. So it's taking those little bitty, giving you some nuggets, finding some little fine-tuned things to help to decrease some anxiety, give you more energy here. Again, the locating that piece. So I was talking about self-awareness. It is a role that is a male dominated, like we've talking about, in sports. And so I will say that I go by Dr. B or even Dr. Borlabi just because I'm a woman. So what I mean by that is that I'd rather be Wendy. I'd rather people just call me Wendy. But when I was with the Olympics, I was with the Olympics for about 8 years. And when I first started with the Olympics, I was saying, call me Wendy. And everybody else was saying, call me Dr. So-and-so. And it was all white males. And so as I started meeting more people, more and more white males, they were always doctor this, doctor that. So I thought, I got to change from being Wendy. I got to up my game. I got to go to Dr. B. I got to go to Dr. Borlabi. I can't just be Wendy any longer because it decreases my value. It shows that I'm less than if I say, call me Wendy, when everyone else is saying, call them doctor. So I needed to, say, this is who I am. And I've earned these degrees, I've earned this. And so, but I think being a woman in this field is actually it's actually a positive. We talked about those emotions. I mean, if you think about it as a male athlete, I'm someone that they can talk to that I have no skin in the game. I don't sign anybody's paycheck. I don't decide whether they're going to play or not. I'm not your agent. You don't have to give anything to me. I'm here to give to you. That is, I'm only here to give to you. You don't have to give anything to me. You don't even have to even ask me how I'm doing because I'm here to give to you, right? And I can give you little things that can help you perform better, which is going to increase your pocketbook, which is increase your value, right? And we can talk about the emotional pieces. We can talk about things that hurt you. You've had a fight with your spouse, or this is going on with your kids, or whatever the case may be. And you can be vulnerable with me, and I'm not judging you because they take the thing I'm a woman, so the emotions are okay to share with me, right? And then they know we're going to move past that. You can share these emotions, but we're going to move past that because I also I have the way that I focus, or the way that I work, should I say, is goal oriented. Problem solve, problem solve, problem solve. So there's a problem. Let's think about it. Let's talk about it, but then let's go in the solution phase. Let's figure out the solution. So they get kind of the best of both worlds. They get to be emotional and vulnerable with me, and they also know that we're going to get back on track and solve the problem and move forward. So I think I think it's a positive being a female in this role. However, there's not very many females in this role. So I'm one in the first of all in the NBA that have sports psychologists full time. I think there's maybe 6 or 7 of us, and I am the only female. So the NBA doesn't have, all NBA teams do not have somebody full time. There's consultants that maybe have somebody on like a consortium basis, but there's not somebody full time. There was a couple more females, but they have moved on to other things. But there's, it's still very much, when I go look at other folks, it is still very much all males when I walk into a room, sports psychologists, coaches, players, whatever the case may be, all the time, for sure.
So I have so many questions, but I know we can't keep going on this one topic, but I'll just pick one. So thinking about if you're the only female in the MBA in this role, right? If I got that right. How do you ensure, and what advice would you give to other women who are listening? How do you ensure that you are paid the equivalent to your male counterpart?
Wow, that's a big question.
And I actually want to open that up to others as well. So I don't mean to put
Um,
Dr. B on the spot with that.
So I, as in the spirit of being vulnerable, just being transparent, I'm going to say that I was not that comfortable prior to, until I heard some outrageous salary that a male that was making, that had half my credentials, half my degrees, half my experience, and was making almost 3 times my salary. And I thought, okay, that's not going to happen. So the next time I was in position to negotiate my salary, I shot up. I'm not even gonna pretend. And I was nervous and scared. My voice was probably shaking. I was sweaty because I thought I'm going for this. And interestingly enough, on the other side, it was we negotiated, but they very much knew what my value was.
Mhm.
But because I was a woman, they were ready to offer me something less. So it was me being okay with shooting for the stars. And also it was me being okay with, if they say no, that I need to be ready to show this is why I deserve this. So I had those points ready. I had it ready with, this is what I've done, this is what I can do on down the line. I didn't have to share all of that because they knew it, but I was ready to give all those pieces of information. And I was even ready to bring in other people to say, this is what's going on in the field. So I think you got to do your homework and talk to other people. And the field of sports psychology, the salary is just huge. And so you have to, I talked to so many people to find out what people were making and what their degrees were and what their experience was. And so I used that as a tool to help me to navigate that. But it was a very bold move, and I was not comfortable. I will tell you that. I was definitely not comfortable. It was very uncomfortable. My dad even, as a side note, my dad even called me and was like, "You did what?"
Yeah.
You didn't just take the offer? I was like, "No, I didn't."
Yes, that's fantastic. So you just got comfortable as much as you could, but you got comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes.
And you just went for it.
I did.
I can't imagine that celebration after. That's great. Anyone else want to add on that topic? Making sure, how do you make sure you're paid the same as your male counterpart? And I'll say this, well, I think one thing I see a lot is, and I have an old colleague who did this, she just simply asked people what they were making. Some people weren't comfortable, so she did like a range just so she can gauge. And she found out she was making like something like $30,000 less than like all of her counterparts. They were all making $30,000 more than her, just by simply just having a candid conversation and being super probably uncomfortable and vulnerable.
I just congratulate Dr. B for that, and I think those conversations are never easy. I think no matter who you are, it's always hard. For whatever reason, it's really hard at times to accept a compliment or make an ask for what you deserve. And I think as long as you have those facts lined up, like she did, it's hard for someone to say no to you. And I just congratulate you on that, because that could not have been an easy conversation.
Yes, those facts are key. Okay, Alicia, I want to talk. Oh, were you going to add something? Go ahead. Okay, so I would talk a little bit about your role too. So your background before the Cubs involved starting a nonprofit called Chicago Run. So can you tell us a little bit about that and how it helps with your current role?
Yeah, so I'm going to piggyback off of what Dr. B said before. I feel like the two of us need to be like connected some way here. I keep piggybacking off of what you said, but you know, again, in full disclosure, running saved my life. It was the place that I could go to deal with any trauma that was going on in my life. When I started coaching running later on in life, I used to tell my youth, there isn't a problem you can't take with you on a run. You might not be able to solve it, but getting those endorphins out, you come back, you're settled, you're more focused, and then you can start to really think through your problem a little bit better. And so that was sort of what prompted my thinking about what I could do running related with youth in Chicago. And it goes also back to that conversation I had with my dad when I was 6 or 7 years old, when he said, do something about it. When you get older, come back to your neighborhood and build programs. And so I did. So it was very serendipitous. In late 2007, I was running on the Nike team here in Chicago, a local Nike team, and somebody wrote an article about being a Latina runner and blah, blah, blah. I don't think anybody read it. I don't even think my mother read the article, but I read it. And in the article, it said, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I had left the nonprofit sector. I was working previously I was working in Little Village, and then I left the nonprofit sector to work in banking for a little while to help elevate their profile in the Latino neighborhoods. And in this article, I said, well, in 5 years, I see myself starting a running organization for Latina girls, because this is what I knew. And so again, probably no one read the article, but I read it. And then all of a sudden I started going, oh my gosh, I've got to do something about it. This is on print. Like, I have to start to do something. So I started Googling everything I could on childhood obesity and running organization and sport for youth development, which was not really a big topic back then. And it just, I made a phone call to what's now called Lurie Children's Hospital, but back in the day was Children's Memorial. And they had an organization called CLOC, the Consortium to Lower Obesity in Chicago Children. And I told them that I wanted to start this running organization. And they said, well, we don't help people start running organizations, but there so happens to be a local family foundation that's looking for a founding executive director of a running nonprofit for children and youth across the city. I mean, the stars could not have been more aligned. And talk about the self-doubt, and going back to sort of what Amy's point was saying about just, where she was saying she kept going back to New York and banging on the door. When I saw that who the family foundation was, very prominent family in the city of Chicago, I thought, oh, they're not going to hire me. I'm 29 years old. I've never run a nonprofit by myself. And I joke around with them, and we're very close friends. And they were going to have to get a restraining order against me if they didn't give me the job, because I was the one. I was like, I know how to do this. I'm 29 years old. I have energy. I know Chicago. I know communities. And so lo and behold, we launched Chicago Run in February of 2008. I was one staff person. I was working out of Panera Bread. I had I had one computer and a phone, and I had 12 Chicago public schools and 2,200 children in my pilot program. And so I was living, breathing Chicago Run. And again, what we were doing wasn't about building the next Usain Bolt or Kara Goucher or whatever. It was about, how does sport help with the healing process, and how does there's my doorbell. How does sport support our young people in being able to get through the difficult situations in their lives? And I think that, again, this is why sport is so uniquely positioned for this. And fast forward 10 years later to 2018, the field of sport for youth development has gained so much traction, and people are starting to pay attention to this more now than ever, about the importance of quality coaches, not just coaching the next best athlete, but coaching what's going on inside of a person. And so I was fortunate enough that this field has grown, and that Cubs Charities was also launching their own sport for youth development programs, utilizing baseball and softball to help support our young people more than just on the field. And so I was fortunate to come over and to continue to elevate this work at Cubs Charities. And I'm very excited that we are also very laser focused in trauma sensitive coaching from 5 years old all the way up through our high school programs. So that's my story.
And it's a good one. That's incredible. That's incredible work. All the work you all are doing is so incredible. So everyone is listening, we've gone over a little bit, but if you can stick around, hang out. I'm thinking if you can pop in some questions into the Q&A section, if you have access to it, or into the chat, whichever one. If you have any questions for our guest, I will try to get to a few of those. And then for ladies, I'm thinking, any of you, I'd love to hear from you on this, is what progress do you still think needs to be made for true gender equality in the sports industry, right? And you can think about the business side or the products on the field. So let's think about the business side, but what would make for true gender equality, right? And how do you recommend women make sure they are paid? And I already said this, but I'm gonna say it again. How do you make sure they're paid equivalent to their male counterparts? Anyone can jump in.
I think there have been some really interesting hiring practices that have been discussed recently. I know I've been a part of a couple of conversations across Sinclair, which is a 50% partner on Marquee with the Cubs, and elsewhere too. When I was at Turner before I came here, about like blind hiring and sort of like not knowing what people's names or genders are. You're just literally looking at resumes and then picking the best candidate. I love those kinds of things, and just thinking about like literally level playing field. You're just looking at the qualifications of the applicant. You're not looking at, if they live in your town, or they have your same, last name, or they have your, their same sex or whatever. I think some of those kind of things are really interesting to explore and to continue to investigate from a corporate perspective, and just, kind of opening up who you're meeting with. I also think recruiting wise too, it's possible that we need to do a better job of recruiting women to some of these positions. Perhaps people don't think that that's an option for them. And I think, all of us are, maybe in some small way doing that today, but I think could probably, do even more, and kind of promoting the jobs that are out there and the kind of work that we're doing, and letting young women know that those are opportunities that they have also.
Yes, thank you, Amy.
Can I just jump in really quickly? I have to take off because I'm 7 minutes late to something else. But one thing I wanted to just say too, and I know Amy said she's got 2 little boys, and Dr. B's got twins, and we have 3 little boys. And one of the things that I think is really important is to start to talk to the young boys about women's leadership. And so, we tend to focus a lot on these, famous men, like boys will focus on the famous male athletes, like in our house. And we've started to change that narrative here at dinner. So we have the boys research female leaders. And I think that's important. Like, and I ask those questions to our young boys too, of how do you support the girls in your classroom? Like, or, and I think that dialogue needs to start young, so that they're not doing it when they're 45 years old and have to retrain their brain or whatnot. But so that's the one other thing I wanted to just add.
Yes, that's great. That's great advice. And I'm sorry that I made you late to your meeting. I get everybody talking. So thank you so much, Alicia, for being here. All right. Does anyone else have anything on that one topic before we move to the few questions that we have? All right, let's jump in. Love this question, because when you think about mentorship, it goes, some people think you need to have an official mentor, you have to pay somebody to be your mentor. They're just not sure how to approach it. So Kristen Lee, and hey, Kristen Lee, she wants to know the best advice on seeking out mentorship.
I'll go first, because if you talk to any of my mentors, they're like, Tasha made me her mentor. There was no formalness about it. Sliding into the DM or the email, whatever way, shape, or form that I wanted to get a hold of a boss person that I wanted to eventually be one day. It's all about like truly connecting and being like vulnerable to be like, hey, you seem really awesome and know your stuff in X, Y, and Z. Can I just talk to you? 9 times out of 10, the person will allow you that space to have that connection, at least first. Whether or not that's an ongoing thing is like your job up to that point, but just reaching out and having that initial, obviously do your homework first. Don't just like randomly send everybody 10 emails like, hey, I'm looking for a mentor. Are you interested? Like, no one has time for that. But if you're intentional about it and you're like, hey, I see that you're doing this really awesome thing, I'd love to learn more about it. Like I said, 9 times out of 10, those people are willing to reach out and help you. And the more that you can build that relationship with that person, that's when you get that true mentorship and that like authentic connection to continue helping you grow. At least that's been good in my sometimes creepy ways of sliding into DMs or emails.
No, and I think you're dead on. Like it's correct, and it's what I will. I'll encourage some of my clients to do that. Like talk to somebody, and what I like about what you said is being intentional, right, and learning. And so when you're intentional, it really has something to do with you want to learn from somebody about something specific that they're doing. Then they want to help because they're like, oh, I've been you. Like I know exactly what you're trying to get, and they do want to they want to help you and take you under their wing. And then that's when you build the relationship. It's the long game. It takes some time, but it's certainly a great approach. So thank you for that. I love this question here. And I think it's a good one to end on. Just since we're over, everyone, thank you for all of your questions, but we'll end with this question is, really, and it just disappeared. So technical difficulties, here it is. So from Alex Bergen, thank you, Alex. We talked about he says, we talked about the most challenging part of being a female in the sports industry. But what about the most rewarding part or the most memorable aspect? I think that's a great question.
I have my most memorable aspect of it was actually sitting at the lobby of the Ritz-Carlton in Toronto during All-Star, having a conversation with Chicago Bulls owner about this position. And I was advised by several men not to share with them that I was a mother or that I was a solo parent, because that was going to be a hindrance to them hiring me. And I decided to go against that because being a mother is who I am. So using my own advice. And so I shared with them my story and then becoming a mother and my twins. And I was so wrapped up in talking because it was very emotional for me. I was trying to stay less emotional, but I was feeling the emotion. But I remember looking up and at one point and seeing tears in eyes, because one of their really close friends had gone through what I went through. And so there was a connection there because they knew exactly what I was talking about and what I went through to have my twins. And so actually sharing was the most positive thing I could have done.
That's such a fantastic story. Thank you for sharing.
You gave people something to connect to, right? And that human connection is what kind of builds relationships. And, now all of a sudden you've got this story that they're, drawn to, and you're their person. They wanted you.
Yes.
It's so cool. And that's what I was going to say is just the people that I've been able to work alongside and meet, both male and female, has been incredible. And sometimes I have to pinch myself. I have those days of low confidence and like I'm blanking now, of course, on the syndrome of imposter syndrome. Like, oh, they're going to find out that I don't know what's going on here. And, it's so hard to get that out of your head sometimes. But it's the people that I've been able to work around, and you just sometimes realize I take stock and I'm like, oh my gosh, look at what I'm able to do for a living each day. And you forget sometimes, or you take it for granted, and every once in a while you need to step back and realize like, wow, I actually know a lot, and I've actually accomplished a lot, and I've actually learned from and gotten to know so many incredible people through the various companies and industries and networking opportunities I've had. And I'm so grateful for that.
Oh, yes. And if whoever's listening, it's a theme. Like no matter what your title is, no matter what level, we all deal with imposter syndrome. It does not matter. And I think what matters most is, back to what Dr. B said, is that self-awareness and dealing with it, right? And not letting it stop you from going after what you want. Tasha, did you have anything to add?
I would love to just say ditto. Like the amount of nuggets that I got from everyone speaking, and like even the questions that are asked, like they were so beautifully written, and like I cannot think, like things like this is what's most memorable about being in this industry, and like being able to connect with like-minded people, women specifically, but also being able to see like the younger generations. I know Alicia is gone, but like when she was talking about getting those little girls ready to run, like that is what is awesome too, to be able to see like the younger generation and help them provide a space, a seat at the table for when I leave, they can step into. I think that's also really rewarding outside of just like sport is emotion in general. Like we like to be excited and like riled up, and being a part of that on your everyday, even though sometimes, you know, every job has its ups and downs, but being a part of that hype is fun.
Yes. All right. Ladies, good note, good place to end. Thank you so much. This has been incredible. On behalf of the panel, we'd love to thank CBEA, so Chicago Baseball and Educational Academy. I've been practicing saying that because it's a lot of words, and I think I nailed it. But thank you for hosting this, and everyone who's listening, please consider supporting them. And as they continue their mission and they want to provide high quality baseball and mentoring programs to Chicago youth. So it's a great cause. So everybody, thank you so much for attending, and panelists, thank you for all of your great insights and being candid.
Thank you, ladies. This was really fun. I appreciate this.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Jahaan, for a great panel, and all of you. It's so cool to meet you guys. So thank you. And thanks to Stephen and his team.
Yes. Yes. Great. Thank you. Steve, we know you're there. You can come back if you want.
Thank you guys for doing this.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Hi, guys. Thank you.